Becky Lynch collapses after Seth Rollins' shocking accusation. WWE drama unfolds. What just happened between Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins? This explosive backstage drama will leave you speechless. In this jaw-dropping WWE storyline twist, Seth Rollins publicly denies Becky Lynch's pregnancy and accuses her of cheating, leading to an emotional breakdown and collapse from the man herself. The tension, betrayal, and heartbreak make this one of the most shocking segments in recent WWE history. Watch as emotions boil over, relationships shatter, and the WWE Universe is left stunned by Seth Rollins' cold reaction. What if the person you trusted most, the person you built your life with, the father of your child, stood in front of the world and denied you? What if the man who once held your hand through the darkest moments of your life now looked you in the eye and claimed the child you carried wasn't his? What if love wasn't enough? This wasn't part of the script. Not for the fans, not for the locker room, and certainly not for Becky Lynch. What unfolded backstage on a stormy Monday Night Raw was never meant to be televised. It was raw in ways WWE rarely dares to be. Unscripted, unforgiving, and undeniably real. As the world of sports entertainment continued spinning under the bright lights and roaring crowds, something much quieter, and much more devastating, was unraveling in the shadows. For weeks, the WWE Universe had been buzzing with speculation. Becky Lynch had pulled out of a series of events citing personal reasons. Some fans suspected an injury. Others pointed to burnout. But a few insiders, people who had noticed the subtle hand gestures, the cautious movement, the protective arm resting over her abdomen, believed something else entirely. Rumors of pregnancy spread like wildfire on Reddit threads, private Discord servers, and industry back channels. Then came the moment no one expected, Seth Rollins addressing the locker room. It was a closed-door talent meeting, called under the pretense of creative alignment. Triple H wasn't present. Neither was Roman Reigns. This wasn't about policy. This was personal. And it started with a silence that hung too long to be comfortable. Seth stood up, hands in the pockets of his leather jacket, eyes shadowed with something no one could read. He looked at his colleagues, people he's fought with, bled with, traveled with for over a decade, and then he dropped the words that shattered the air like glass. I just want to be clear with everyone before this gets out of hand. I'm not the father. At first, no one reacted. It was too surreal. Then came the stifled gasps. Someone dropped their coffee. A few exchanged glances, trying to decide if this was part of some elaborate storyline. But it wasn't. Seth wasn't smiling. There was no laugh track. He wasn't cutting a promo. He was unraveling. What followed was a mixture of confusion, confrontation, and deep discomfort. A few superstars, like Sami Zayn and Liv Morgan, reportedly tried to defuse the moment. Others simply left the room. But the damage was done. The words had been spoken, and within minutes, they were already being whispered down hallways, texted to group chats, and eventually, leaked to the press. Becky hadn't been in that room. She had no idea what had just happened. According to a backstage assistant, she had been in wardrobe when she received a short text from Bayley, "You need to come to Gorilla now." When Becky arrived, she wasn't met with fans or pyro or music. She was met with stares, dozens of them, from fellow talent and backstage crew. No one spoke. Some looked away. A few looked at the floor. And standing in the center of it all, jaw clenched, shoulders squared, was Seth. He wasn't just cold. He was unrecognizable. "What is this?" Becky asked, voice low, trying to keep her composure. "What's going on?" Seth didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His words carried the kind of weight that didn't require volume. "You told them I'm the father," he said. "And now everyone's looking at me like I'm lying." Becky froze. Her breath caught in her throat. "Because you are." The air thickened. Crew members quietly began stepping away, sensing that they were no longer witnesses to drama, but to tragedy. "I don't know what you're trying to pull," Seth continued, "but I'm not playing this game. I want a paternity test before anything else." That's when Becky collapsed. It wasn't theatrical. It wasn't dramatic. There was no scream, no fainting pose. Her legs just gave out. Like someone had pulled the foundation out from underneath her. 1 second she was standing, breathing, fighting for her life, and the next, she was on the floor, arms trembling, gasping through silent sobs. Paramedics were called instantly. Security cleared the area. But the emotional damage? That had already carved itself into the hearts of everyone present. Becky was escorted to the medical room, where she was checked for injuries. Physically, she was fine. But emotionally? She was wrecked. A shell of herself. According to one of the medical staff who later spoke off the record, she didn't say a word. Not for 10 straight minutes. Just sat there, staring at the wall, shaking. The story spread quickly. By the time Raw went off the air, fan speculation was on fire. Some believed it was a storyline, a dark new angle. Others thought it was a shoot gone wrong. But those closest to the situation knew better. This wasn't scripted. This wasn't TV. This was real heartbreak unfolding in front of the world. Triple H was reportedly furious. Not at Becky. Not even at the leak. But at Seth. "You don't air out family drama on company time," he reportedly told someone backstage. "You settle your house before you bring it to mine." But it was too late. The headlines were already writing themselves. Rollins denies Becky's baby, Becky collapses backstage after Seth's accusation, and is this the end of WWE's power couple? WWE PR scrambled to manage the narrative. No statements were released, but carefully placed quotes began appearing in media outlets. "This is a personal matter," one anonymous WWE spokesperson told a wrestling news site. "We ask that everyone respects their privacy." But privacy was already gone. And respect? That was evaporating fast. Backstage morale hit an all-time low. Wrestlers felt uneasy. Some, like Kevin Owens and Rhea Ripley, reportedly refused to engage in any further segments involving either Rollins or Becky until things were resolved. "We can't pretend this didn't happen," one said. "It's not just drama. It's a breakdown. And everyone's feeling it." And then came Roman Reigns. The tribal chief hadn't spoken publicly in months. He was on a reduced schedule, reportedly dealing with family obligations and injury rehab. But when he walked into the locker room 2 days later at SmackDown, everything stopped. He wasn't there to perform. He wasn't there for a match. He was there for Becky. According to multiple sources, Roman entered her locker room without his security or entourage. Becky was seated, her eyes red but focused, her body tense like she was expecting another blow. But Roman didn't say much. He just sat next to her. And after a long silence, he finally said, "You don't owe anyone proof of who you are." That was it. That one line. And then he left, but his message was clear. For all the chaos that had erupted, for all the accusations, rumors, and betrayals, Becky wasn't alone, yet the damage lingered. In the days that followed, Becky pulled out of multiple appearances. She stopped posting on social media. No interviews. No cryptic messages. Just silence. Seth, on the other hand, seemed to double down. He was seen leaving the performance center alone, often late at night, avoiding reporters and fans. His demeanor had shifted from aggressive to hollow. Those close to him claimed he hadn't spoken to Becky since the confrontation. And when asked if he regretted what he said, his answer was cold, "I said what I said." But behind that coldness was something deeper. Something more fragile. According to a producer who worked with Seth on recent segments, he looked broken. Like someone who'd already lost something but didn't know how to admit it. The question now was no longer about whether the accusation was real. It was about why it was made. Was Seth Rollins reacting out of hurt? Out of fear? Out of betrayal? Or was he projecting a deeper pain he hadn't faced? Insiders speculated that the couple had been drifting for months. Separate travel schedules. Long stretches apart. disagreements about family, career, direction. And when Becky found out she was pregnant again, instead of it being a moment of joy, it became a trigger. Some suggested Seth felt trapped. That fatherhood would force him to give up more than he was ready to. Others whispered that Becky had been spending time with a longtime friend from the UK circuit, someone Seth never trusted, but speculation can't replace truth. And truth, in this case, was elusive. Back in Stamford, WWE leadership began having emergency meetings. Not because they were concerned about storylines, but because they were concerned about humanity. For years, Becky and Seth had been pillars of the locker room. Role models. Icons. And now, they were reminders that even the strongest personas could fall apart. What happens when personal tragedy spills into the ring? When betrayal isn't scripted, but lived? When the crowd cheers while the performer quietly breaks inside, the man had fallen. Not in defeat. Not in character. But in life. And Seth Rollins, once the architect of the Shield, the visionary, now found himself building a wall no one could understand, and through all of it, one haunting question lingered in the minds of those who knew them both: what if this wasn't betrayal, but a cry for help? The hours after Becky's collapse were filled with a silence that echoed louder than any arena chant. Her phone remained off. The group chats, once filled with gifs, memes, and harmless ribbing, had gone eerily quiet. Even her closest friends in WWE didn't know what to say. Sasha Banks, despite no longer being a full-time presence in WWE, reportedly reached out with a short message: "I've been where you are. When you're ready to breathe, I'm here." But Becky didn't reply. Because what was there to say? How do you even begin to explain what it feels like when your reality has been pulled out from under you? Back at home in Davenport, Iowa, a place that used to be their shared sanctuary, Seth Rollins reportedly stayed alone. The house felt colder now. The nursery they once painted together sat untouched. A child's blanket remained folded on the armchair Becky used to rock in. One close friend of Seth's described the atmosphere bluntly: "He's not living. He's existing. He doesn't talk. Doesn't eat much. He's like a ghost with a heartbeat." Seth's refusal to speak wasn't out of pride. It was out of paralysis. He had made the statement. The one thing that could never be unsaid. He had publicly questioned the integrity of the one woman who had stood by him through everything. Who had carried him through his darkest injuries. Who had lifted him through his moments of self-doubt. And now, because of one moment of emotional combustion, that bond had cracked. Maybe beyond repair. According to WWE sources, Triple H had a private phone call with Seth just 2 days after the incident. No assistance. No PR. Just two men, with too much history between them to speak in half-truths. The call reportedly lasted only 6 minutes. Triple H didn't yell. He didn't ask for apologies. He simply asked one question: was it true? There was a pause. A long one. And then Seth replied, "I don't know anymore." That was the part that caught everyone off guard. The not knowing. Because in the world of WWE, where the line between real and fake is constantly blurred, Seth's uncertainty struck like lightning. Was he unsure of the pregnancy? Of the timeline? Or was he unsure of himself? Those closest to Becky said she spent days holed up at a friend's estate outside Orlando. Not with family. Not with agents. Just alone. Her agent confirmed she had pulled out of all upcoming appearances, including SummerSlam. And when asked whether she would eventually return to WWE, the answer was simply, that's not her focus right now. Her focus is surviving this. WWE tried to spin the story. The official line was that Becky had suffered exhaustion-related complications. But the fans weren't buying it. Not when the whispers had already gotten out. Not when fans at house shows started chanting "You're the dad" during Seth's entrance. And not when, in a moment of unplanned vulnerability, Becky's longtime friend and fellow superstar Bayley broke down in tears while discussing the situation during a podcast appearance. "She's not just a wrestler," Bayley said, voice cracking. "She's a mom. She's a partner. She's a fighter. And right now, she's broken. The media firestorm reached a fever pitch when TMZ published a leaked clip from a backstage camera, grainy, but unmistakable. The footage showed the moment Becky collapsed. The moment her face changed from defiance to devastation. The clip went viral within hours, racking up millions of views across TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. WWE fans flooded the comments with heartbreak and rage. One user wrote, "This isn't entertainment anymore. This is trauma." Another replied, "Rollins needs to fix this now." But fixing it was easier said than done. Especially when another rumor emerged, a rumor that someone inside WWE had leaked the clip intentionally. Some pointed fingers at disgruntled staff. Others suggested it was a PR distraction. But the damage was done. Fans no longer saw this as a storyline. They saw it as a real-life implosion of one of wrestling's most admired couples, and then, out of nowhere, Seth Rollins broke his silence. In a shocking move, he appeared on The Bump, WWE's digital talk show, alone, unannounced, and without promotion. The hosts were visibly unprepared. Cameras caught them flipping cue cards as Seth walked onto the set, wearing a simple black hoodie and no smile. He didn't sit down. He didn't make jokes. He simply looked into the camera and said, "I made a mistake." The silence in the studio was suffocating. "I let fear win," he continued. "I let the pressure of this job, this life, this, everything, get to me. And I hurt the one person who never gave up on me. I questioned the mother of my child. I questioned the woman I love. And I don't know if I deserve forgiveness. But I know I have to try." And with that, he left. No segment. No Q&A. Just a man standing in front of the world, publicly admitting what he never could privately. The internet exploded. Fans were divided. Some applauded the vulnerability. Others said it was too little, too late. A trending hashtag emerged within the hour, #ForgiveBecky, but the person who didn't react publicly was Becky. Not a word. Not a tweet. Not a single Instagram story, because this wasn't about forgiveness. Not yet. This was about healing. Sources inside WWE revealed that Becky had begun meeting with a private therapist, someone outside the company, recommended by a non-wrestling friend. The focus of their work wasn't about returning to work or salvaging a relationship. It was about reclaiming her identity, because for years, Becky Lynch had been the man. The face of the women's revolution. The icon. The mother. The wife. But in that one devastating moment backstage, all of those titles collapsed under the weight of one man's doubt. And now, she was rebuilding. Not as a character. Not as a performer. But as a human being. What came next stunned everyone. WWE programming aired a cryptic 30-second black and white promo. No music. Just clips of Becky's greatest moments, her Royal Rumble victory, her WrestleMania main event win, her first title lift. And then, in the final frame, her voice. "They say pain makes you stronger. But sometimes, pain just reminds you that you're still alive." No return date. No announcement. Just that haunting line. Fans were left in stunned silence. Some cried. Others speculated. But most agreed on one thing: Becky was coming back. And this time, it wouldn't just be about wins and belts. It would be about redemption. About reclaiming her story. Backstage, Seth Rollins reportedly watched the promo alone in his locker room. According to a close colleague, he didn't say a word. He just stared at the screen, fists clenched, eyes wet, because he knew this wasn't just a comeback. It was a reckoning. And somewhere deep in the Florida night, far from the cheers, the pyro, and the betrayal, Becky Lynch stood barefoot in her kitchen, one hand resting on her stomach, the other holding a photo of their wedding day. No cameras. No fans. Just a woman who had been broken, but not beaten. And the question now wasn't whether she'd forgive Seth Rollins, it was whether she'd ever need him again. The weeks that followed became a masterclass in WWE silence. No official statements. No scripted responses. No sudden surprises. Just absence. Absence that rang louder than any promo. Seth Rollins quietly stepped away from Raw appearances. Becky remained unseen. And yet, somehow, their story was the only thing people talked about. In Stamford, WWE executives debated endlessly behind closed doors. Should they capitalize on the drama? Spin it into a storyline? Or should they protect what was left of two of their most iconic stars? According to one executive who spoke anonymously, the conversation grew tense. We're not just dealing with characters here. We're dealing with trauma. This isn't creative. This is personal. But the locker room? They weren't silent. Whispers turned into full-blown conversations. Superstars picked sides. Some rallied behind Seth, saying he snapped under pressure, something they all understood far too well. Others stood firmly behind Becky, citing years of loyalty and strength, the way she'd carried the company on her back while balancing motherhood and scrutiny. One top female superstar reportedly said, "If they don't treat her return like royalty, we riot." And then, without warning, it happened. Becky Lynch showed up, not on TV. Not in a pre-taped segment. But backstage at a WWE live event in Chicago. No makeup. No entourage. No cameras. Just Becky. The same woman who once walked out to deafening roars, now walked quietly through the halls of Allstate Arena like a ghost returning to her body. She didn't speak much. Just nodded. Smiled. Thanked people who embraced her. Some cried. Some apologized. Some didn't know what to say. But her presence alone was an earthquake. Word traveled fast. By the end of the night, every major wrestling news outlet had picked up the headline, "Becky Lynch returns backstage at WWE event." First appearance since collapse. And perhaps the most surprising moment came when Seth Rollins, also present at the event, never approached her. He was reportedly told she was there. That she looked different. Stronger. Sharper. Colder. But he never sought her out. Whether out of shame or respect, no one could say. But sources say the two didn't exchange a single word. Not a glance. Not even a brush of hands. They simply orbited the same backstage space, tethered by history but divided by silence. Becky's return sent waves through the WWE creative team. Triple H called an immediate meeting. "We don't rush this," he reportedly said. "We follow her lead." And follow her lead they did. 3 days later, WWE social media dropped a single image. A black silhouette of Becky, head turned to the side, hair tied back, standing in front of a shattered mirror. No caption. No date. Just one word, her. The post broke the internet. Fans knew. She was coming back. And it wasn't just for revenge. It was for legacy. Meanwhile, Seth Rollins spiraled inward. His social media turned dark, quotes about identity, solitude, broken men. One particularly haunting post read, "The pain doesn't leave. You just learn to carry it differently." Many believed it was directed at Becky. Others feared it reflected something deeper, and then came the most unexpected twist of all. A leaked email, allegedly from a member of the WWE creative staff, suggested that Seth had personally requested to be written off television indefinitely. The reason cited, personal and emotional exhaustion. WWE approved it. Seth Rollins, the visionary, the Grand Slam champion, the man who once strutted into every arena like he owned it, had finally stepped away. But Becky? She was just getting started. Her return was set for a payback episode of Raw in Brooklyn. No entrance music. No pyro. The lights dropped. The crowd buzzed. And then, just a single spotlight on the ring. Becky stood in the center, mic in hand, eyes locked with the hard camera. She didn't cut a promo. She told a story. "My name is Rebecca Quinn. And for a long time, the world knew me as the man. The toughest woman in the room. The champion. The fighter. But I forgot something. Being the man means standing when it hurts. It means showing up when the world tries to break you. She paused, and it means speaking when your voice shakes. The arena was dead silent. Not a chant. Not a cheer. Just reverence. What happened between Seth and I wasn't just personal. It was public. It was cruel. It was confusing. And it was heartbreaking. But I'm not here to settle scores. I'm here to remind you, and myself, who I am. I am not someone's rumor. I am not someone's accusation. I am not someone's collapse. I am a mother. I am a fighter. I am Becky Lynch. The crowd erupted, and in that moment, all the pain, all the speculation, all the betrayal, none of it erased, but all of it reclaimed. But even as she stood tall, a new question began to stir in the minds of everyone watching. What happens when the one person you rose beside is no longer standing with you? Because Becky was back. And Seth? He was gone. Insiders later revealed that after Becky's return speech, she exited the arena immediately. No celebration. No after party. She walked out, hoodie pulled up, into the cool Brooklyn night with her daughter waiting at the hotel. That was her focus now. Not feuds. Not belts. Family. And yet, the unspoken thread remained. Would she ever confront Seth? Would they ever speak again? Would WWE find a way to weave their real-life fracture into the fabric of its storylines? Or was this simply too raw, too real, even for wrestling? One writer put it best, sometimes the best stories don't need to be booked. Sometimes they're just lived. But as the road to WrestleMania loomed ahead, fans couldn't help but wonder, would there be a final chapter? A face-to-face confrontation under the lights? Or would this saga, like so many broken hearts in the business, quietly fade into the archives of what might have been? All anyone knew for certain was that the WWE Universe had changed. Because once upon a time, Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins were the gold standard of wrestling love stories, and now, they were its most painful lesson. In the weeks following Becky's emotional return, something subtle began to shift, not just in her presence, but in the entire tone of WWE. Raw episodes felt heavier. Fans noticed the silences between commentary, the way camera angles lingered on Becky's face just a second longer than usual, as if the producers knew they were capturing not just a character, but a woman still healing in real time. There were no title matches. No immediate rivalries. No one attacked her mid-promo. WWE, for once, was giving space to a story without forcing it forward, and yet, behind the scenes, the wheels were turning. The locker room had quietly divided itself between respect and discomfort. Some superstars found it hard to approach Becky, unsure of what to say or how to act. Others, like Bayley, Bianca Belair, and Natalya, stood firmly by her side. Not because of politics, but because of shared pain. Because in a business built on persona and performance, they knew how rare it was for someone to admit they were truly hurting. Seth Rollins remained absent. No interviews. No fan sightings. Nothing. It was as if he had vanished completely. Until one night, at an untelevised live event in Tampa, he appeared. Not as a performer. Not even as Seth Rollins. Just as Colby. The man behind the mask. He sat in the very back row of the arena, hoodie over his head, watching from a distance. A few fans recognized him, but didn't approach. Word quickly spread backstage, and before the show ended, security had escorted him through a private exit. He never made it into the locker room. But those who saw him described his eyes as lost. Not angry. Not embarrassed. Just hollow. The next day, a photograph surfaced online, grainy, dimly lit, showing Seth in that back row, eyes fixed on the ring. The post went viral in minutes. The caption was simple, watching what he used to belong to. Becky didn't comment. Instead, she posted a photo of her daughter's tiny hand wrapped around her thumb, captioned, "This is who I fight for." The message was clear. She wasn't waiting on closure, but then WWE's production team did something unexpected. In a vignette aired on Raw, a series of slow-motion clips played, Seth and Becky winning championships. walking down the ramp together, celebrating in the ring, laughing during backstage interviews. Then came the crash, Seth's outburst, Becky's collapse.